So maybe some of you saw my biohacking talk last year, which was about performing better and just hacking our biology to be better at things. So maybe have more awareness, focus, and so on. And I want to continue with this train of thought, but also mention one thing that I was kind of surprised that a lot of people who go to these events which are about liberty, about freedom, they have this idea that the only thing that we can do to improve our freedom is to change the world. So maybe start a revolution, change the political system, opt out, or all these ideas that have something to do with something that is outside of us. And I believe this is actually not true, and I think that most of what we perceive as freedom is something that we have under our direct control. I'm gonna steal a quote from Paul Rosenberg. The quote is by Professor Alan Bloom, but I read it in Paul Rosenberg's Freeman's Perspective. And it relates to this house. Maybe you have seen that the motto of this house is "Enter outside." And the quote goes like this: "The most successful tyranny is not the one that uses force to assure uniformity, but the one that removes the awareness of other possibilities, that makes it seem inconceivable that other ways are viable, that removes the sense that there is an outside." So if you have seen, for example, Frank Brown's talk, Smuggler's talk, and many other talks at this Congress, I believe that you now understand that there are other possibilities, that there are other options actually. And what I want to do is to show you a few examples of how you can work on your own internal sense of freedom. So let's enter inside ourselves, and I think that a lot of our freedom is determined by our mindset and our actions. What the feeling of not being free usually boils down to is fear. So we feel that we are not free if we are bound by some rules, and we fear that if we break them, something bad will happen to us, or we are not accepted by society, and so on. So a lot of this is growing by fighting our own fears of insecurity, of being different, and so on. So I now want to mention one important thing, that becoming free is a natural state. It is easy. It is the absence of all these fears and limitations and barriers. So once you start playing with this, just realize in your head that you're not trying to become something new. You don't need to learn new skills. You just need to unlearn your barriers and fears, and that's what we'll try to do with some of these ideas. So these are like small hacks that you can try. What I want to mention is that it is an action. So if you're here to write down a few notes and leave and, quote me or complain about the stuff I said, you're at the wrong place. So the only way to gain benefit from what I'm going to show you is if you get inspired and actually try one of those things. So it's an action. And another important point is the first fear that we usually have when we try to change something about ourselves. and it's fear that we are not good enough or perfect enough to do something. So you can see it with people starting companies, that they, tune the sales page, they want to make the product perfect, and years pass by, people talk about their great ideas and they never happen. And I think there's a notion of being perfectly imperfect, so embracing the imperfection. So I believe I started 3 companies, and I believe that you can focus your energy on just a few things and everything else is total chaos. So, to create something, and it also applies to personal freedom, is to embrace the fact that it's not going to be perfect. So you can just start doing things. It will be hard at first. So it's like with everything. When I tried to learn meditation, it was horrible. I wasn't good at it. And I think the way that you know that you're learning something is that you're in a place that is uncomfortable and you're stretching yourself. So the easy road gets you to a place called disappointment and regret. So I think putting something out there, or trying something that you feel is not perfect, is actually a good thing, because the place called disappointment and regret is not where we want to end up. I suggest that we change, do our best to simply do. And there's another quote I like, which says that life is too short to waste, and dreams are fulfilled only through action, not through endless planning to take action. So what actions can we take? I'm gonna do talk about a small biohack that I talked a little bit last year about, but I don't think it was good enough, and I want to promote it so you can experiment with it. So one barrier that people often have is that they don't have enough energy, and they're in this constant loop of I need to eat, I ate some food, now I'm, digesting, I'm very low in energy, and at some point I need to eat again, and we're a lot of us are controlled by these waves of energy, and then a sudden drop in energy, and then we need to eat again. And there is actually a way out of this. And I believe that this gave me a lot of freedom, personal freedom, because I don't care if I eat for lunch. I'm not gonna be nervous and, yell at people. So there are 2 main sources of energy, which is sugar or carbohydrates and fats. And we're all used to sugar. One of the reasons that we are used to sugar is that because of a study from 1930s that was now shown to be a flawed study, which said that there's a direct correlation between fat intake and cardiovascular diseases. And this now has been proven wrong, but the effect that it had on the population was something that is called low-fat diet. And if you are on a low-fat diet, it means you need to get energy from somewhere. And if you don't get it from fat, you get it from sugar. So that's the only other option. So if you're either forced or convinced, actually. You are forced, for example, when you eat at public school and you don't have choice of what you eat. Your main fuel becomes carbohydrates. So what does it do to your body? There's an insulin response. So when your body senses there is a higher level of glucose in your bloodstream, insulin is released, and then insulin takes care of getting rid of the glucose. So you have a sudden spike of energy from sugar, then insulin takes over and gets rid of the glucose, and that's the down. So a lot of people, when they go to lunch, eat something at noon. At 1 p.m., they're totally out of energy. Some of them, I've seen people in our office to even fall asleep, and they think they're, digesting, that their blood went to their stomach and helped digest stuff. No, this is the insulin response. So this creates sugar addiction, which you can. So if you are 4 or up to 6 hours without food, and you get nervous, you have a lot of low energy levels, and you're craving something to eat. If this happens to you, you're addicted to sugar. So there should be absolutely no problem for every person who is also using fat as an energy source to go without eating for 24 hours without any effect. So if you feel an effect that I'm hungry and if I don't eat now, I'm gonna, yell at people or, or I need to sleep or something, you're addicted to sugar. So I suggest you try this hack. Another interesting point, when I switched to fat as a primary source of energy, I found out that hunger is actually a different feeling than the sugar craving. So when I thought I was hungry, I was actually just craving sugar, and hunger as a feeling is something completely different. So if you try to perceive how it feels in your body, it's something else. So if you now say you're hungry, you are probably just having a sugar craving. So this diet caused I would say it's an epidemic of diabetes, especially in children, which wasn't a thing 100 years ago. There are a lot of dangerous side effects, and I don't want you to fear carbs. You can do carbs, but try to experiment with fat as a source of energy. So the first important thing is don't eat bad fats, and the most common bad fat is called sunflower oil. The reason is that your cell membranes are made of fat, and if they're made of a shitty fat like sunflower oil, they're not stable. So it takes around 3 years to replace all the cell membranes. So the first hack I recommend everyone is, if you have that thing in your home, don't give it to anyone, throw it away and switch to good fats. Fats are a long-term stable source of energy, so you can use them. You won't feel these ups and downs. It's just a very stable, productive state. It's great for brain. Also, a lot of micronutrients need fat for absorption. So if you eat vitamins and you don't have fat with them, a lot of them you just pee out because they're not absorbed if they're not consumed with fats. So there's something called ketone bodies, which are produced from certain fats as a source of energy in a process called ketosis. And you can start this process. It is at first it can be quite difficult, because if your body is used to eating sugar, you usually won't make any ketones in your bloodstream. So there are 3 ways basically to kickstart ketosis. One is carbohydrates restriction and fasting. This can take 2 weeks to a month. So you restrict your carbohydrates intake. So that means no rice, no potatoes, nothing that contains any carbohydrates. And it can be a little bit painful, because you are going to feel those sugar cravings. Your body would tell you that you're going to die if you don't eat some sugar. So there are not a lot of people who can actually do this, but I've met some, and they have interesting stories about that. But when you get used to it, so when your body thinks it's dying and it needs to switch to another source of energy, it switches to fats, and then you can do that. It helps to fast, at least intermittently. So intermittent fasting means your last meal is in the evening and the next meal is maybe dinner the next day, or at 4 p.m. or something. Depends on how long you can do that. So that's one way to get to fat as a source of energy. There is also a special type of fat called MCT oil, which gets turned into ketones much faster. So MCT oil basically kickstarts this production of ketones. You can actually measure it if you have a sampling kit and you pee or there's a breath ketone meter. So I highly recommend that you actually measure your ketones, because other than that you don't really know if you are making any. It gives you real energy. So there are a lot of people who drink something called bulletproof coffee or fat coffee. So this gives you real energy. It's not fake energy like from caffeine. It's not tricking your brain. It is real energy that your body can burn. So if you do this, you will probably eat less, because fats are really energy dense, and it will lower the sugar cravings. So it's not as painful as normal fasting, and it's very smooth energy. People add also butter and ghee. It is interesting that when your body sees ketones in your bloodstream, it will consume more fats. So if you kickstart the ketosis with MCT oil, you can get another type of fat like butter, ghee. You can use cacao butter or other healthy fats. And they can be used during the day. So this combination is very long-term energy, and it can last for hours. If you do this in the morning, you should avoid carbs in the morning to keep insulin levels low. It won't work if you eat a donut with the coffee. Okay, there's a third way which I skip for now, but you can actually buy exogenous ketones. So this is the product of ketosis. You can eat them, and you can have an instant feeling of how the ketosis looks like. So you can try those. Mostly it's beta hydroxybutyrate or acetyl acetate. So these are the products of ketosis. And if you want to give it a try and feel like a Superman in the gym the next day or right after you take it, go for it. All right. So this is a small biohack. Another hack for feeling more free is actually surrounding myself with inspiring people that uplift me and inspire me, and we try to avoid toxic people. So a lot of people don't consciously think about forming their social circle. You have classmates, you have, colleagues from work, you meet some people, and then for a lot of people, it's a constant renewal of these social circles. I think it makes a real good sense to sit down, write down the names of people you spend time with, and ask yourself questions like, oh, do I actually look forward to meeting this person? Or when this guy calls me, am I happy to, pick up and say, hi, how are you doing? Or am I like, oh, like, what does he want again? So, you can create a set of criteria for you, and for everyone it is going to be different, but it's taking a liberty of forming your own social circle, and it takes two parts. One is getting rid of toxic people. You don't need to dramatically break up with them or something. You can just, spend less time with them, but do that, like go through the process, figure out who you spend most time with, and pick the people you spend most time with. It is a great upgrade of your life. And I really like Nathaniel Brandon's self-esteem work. How many of you know about Nathaniel Brandon? Okay, quite a few. I'm surprised. Perfect. So his work on self-esteem is it's probably not what you think, and one of the main pillars of self-esteem, how you can tell if someone has a healthy self-esteem, is if they're comparing themselves to themselves or to others. So am I trying to be better than my colleague or the next guy or someone else? Or am I trying to be better than I was yesterday? So comparing myself to others is a sense of very low and very unhealthy self-esteem. And this is another hack. If you find yourself, if you consciously think about how you perceive yourself, are you trying to be better than someone else, or just do you want to improve on your condition? So very interesting. I highly recommend this book, and it's a lot of work, but I think it's very much worth it, and it upgrades your sense of freedom, because then if you're comparing yourself to yesterday's version of yourself, you're actually controlled by you, but by your thoughts, not by someone else. I've been talking to many economists about where to invest my time and money, and surprisingly a lot of them said that the best investment is investing in yourself, in your personal development, in your skills that are marketable or that improve your day-to-day life. And a lot of them, of course, say that a good investment is also investment in your children. So I was thinking about it, and I actually think that it is a really sound investment strategy, because if you buy a stock or some asset, you usually have very little control of the returns or the appreciation of value. But I think for most people it is actually quite easy meaning doable, to, let's say, double their income by learning new skills, by becoming better, by outsourcing things you're not good at, and so on. So I believe that I've seen I've heard a lot of people here talk about money and how they're not motivated by money. I think that money is a really great way to it enhances whatever you are. So if you're an asshole and you have a lot of money, you're probably a really big asshole. If you're a nice guy and you can use the money to grow and to spend time on worthy things, then it makes everything easier. So I would say investing in yourself, just to become better, and also to help your monetary situation is I think really good thing to do. And if you have children, I guess that would be also a very smart strategy to invest in them. One other thing that is related in this is that most people, when they're trying to grow personally, they focus on their weaknesses and they try to overcome them. So for example, if I'm very unreliable, if I can't finish things on time, there are two things. I can either learn self-discipline and overcome this weakness, or I can find a job where this doesn't matter. I can become an artist or something else. So I don't know. It sometimes matters for artists too, but I hope you're getting what I'm saying. So a really good thing to do is, most people know their weaknesses. I'm awful at drawing pictures. I'm awful at managing people. So we know these things, and the fact that we know them is we try to overcome them. And I think a much better way is to learn about your strengths and find work and try to come to a place where you can actually capitalize on your strengths. So there's a really nice test which can show you some of your personal strengths. I don't know how these tests are, but this is from guys who invented positive psychology, which is about using your strengths to grow, not to, talk about your childhood traumas and try to fix them. So I suggest start there, but also try looking for what you're good at, what your strengths are, and try to apply as much of them into your life as possible. If you have a job that makes you constantly fight with your weaknesses and not use your strengths, then I suggest changing the job. This is another thing. I don't think, as I mentioned in the beginning, I don't think that really good strategy is trying to wait for the world around us to change. And I think we can, and you have seen many people who have done things like Follow My Vote or other projects here. The last guy also just solve the world's problems, and if people have problems, they usually want to pay money to make sure they go away or they get solved. Just that I hope that you all already got the message at this conference, but most problems get solved by private people, not governments. So if you're in a place where you're waiting the government to solve your problem, you will wait for a long time. I believe we can live a long time, but it could be kind of wasted in waiting to do this. Again, the solutions don't have to be perfect. So there are problems out there that can take 2 weeks to solve by some entrepreneur that just goes and does it. And you also don't need to become an entrepreneur. So if someone is, if your customers or your colleagues are frustrated by something, you can fix it. I have 2 examples here. One is Chien-Meng Tan, who is an engineer at Google, and he found out that a lot of his colleagues are kind of nervous and not in a good place mentally. So he started an engineer. So he was not an HR person or something like that. He started a course in Google for other Googlers he was teaching them meditation and teaching them how to use it to overcome these internal issues. Then he wrote a few books about these topics and also switched his full-time position from engineer to I would call it meditation guru inside Google. So he was totally not qualified. He's not a monk. He has just solved his own problem. Then he saw that other people have this problem, and he just switched gears from one day to the next inside the company. So he didn't even need to think about business plans or anything like that. So I think we're all capable of doing it. It doesn't need to be a full-time job, but if you see something that you can improve, it can be a very smart career move as well, and you would help with your goals. This one is really interesting. That's a photo taken in Bali. This was a guy that was picking plastic trash or all trash around Mother Temple in Bali, and people were making fun of him. You're a garbage man, and like, why are you doing it? People are throwing it there anyway, and so on. And one day he met 2 couples, one from Japan, one from Australia, and they invested in his business, which meant that they bought a machine for recycling plastic into like a plastic resin. And he started to manufacture pots for growing plants. So this is something else that he cared about, that people actually grow their stuff. So this is a guy that was completely crazy. He was pissed about the problem. He hated that the beautiful temple is, covered in trash by tourists, by locals. Everyone was throwing shit around. Now he's paying the locals because he's buying out the plastic bottles. So the locals that were laughing at him are now collecting the bottles because they want the money. And this guy is making plastic pots and selling them and making a profit. So we were talking with this guy. Not a single time did he mention anything about government trying to solve the problem of plastic. He just did it himself with help of those ugly bad capitalists that made the capital investment. By the way, the words capital investments were used by him, so he told that was a capital investment. This guy didn't finish elementary school and he completely understand business cases, energy costs, everything. So I think if this guy can do it, any one of us can do it. If you just find problem that pisses you off, you can do it. There's an article, a blog post I wrote about this case. So if you understand Slovak, it's in the Slovak version is on menieštátu.sk. So biofeedback is something I'm also interested in, and here I'm going to show you a very simple version which I learned recently. So normally biofeedback for me was those fancy machines that were measuring either heart rate variability or my brain waves and amplitude of alpha brain waves and these things. And we have one very nice feedback loop inside of us without any devices, and that is the direct mind and body connection between our emotions and our body feelings. So if you just close your eyes and perceive how you feel in your body, you might find patterns. Like, for example, if I'm afraid, I have this weird feeling in my stomach. You know, if I'm excited, my heart starts beating, and all these things. And the reason why this is such a nice hack, and it gives you a lot of information about yourself, is that with these feedback loops you are becoming more aware of these things. And there's a parallel. So for example, if you try to learn to juggle, it is very good to have a feedback. So feedback in this case is your eyes seeing the balls. Try to learn to juggle with closed eyes. It will be very difficult because you don't know if your hand is moving in the opposite direction than the ball. You would basically fail immediately. So if you have a feedback from the system, so you're controlling something, and you also have a feedback on how well you're doing immediately. So these things work when they're immediate. It doesn't help you much if you ask yourself, oh, how I felt yesterday. You might remember, but you might not, and you might make something up. So this is a really, really interesting hack. You can do it several times a day. It is good if you can do it also when you are feeling good emotions. So most people, when they get angry, they say, okay, I need to process this, so they close their eyes and they see how they feel. But what about when you're happy? What about after sex? Or what about, the sun is shining and it's a beautiful day? Where do you feel it in your body? And these connections works both ways. So you can actually do things like breathe and try to release the physical component, and it will also alter the emotional component. So this is a very nice integrated biofeedback mechanism for processing my emotions. I'm doing it right now. I actually have it on my calendar a few times a day just to do a quick check of how I feel in my body. So, and the last thing is about fear and authorities. As I said, fear is the main way that the oppressive regimes control our minds. So it's not about actually the police, handcuffing you. It's the fear that this could happen. So we comply not because we're forced by, an actual guy with a gun or something like that. It's the fear of what might happen if we break those rules. And there is a very huge stress response. It leads to health issues. There are many studies that say that if you fear something, and actually being in a hierarchy is a guarantee that you will fear at least something, your cortisol will go up, you will be chronically stressed. So this is very important thing that you can work on. And the way it works in our society is that they present you a fear. Let's say a terrorist might blow up this building. And then they offer either a solution. So let's say, but if we say that people cannot bring liquids and weapons, this will never happen. Of course, it's a shitty solution. It's just, a sticker on the fear. But then you feel that you need these people. So the fear and solution are intertwined, and then you are happy that there are these authorities, these hierarchies that is protecting you against your fear. What is very interesting is that the thing that you are fearing didn't go away. The terrorist can still blow up the building, but now that you are harassed into not bringing liquids, you feel safer for some reason. The other way they do it is they replace it with another fear. So anyone who helps terrorists, even by sending a link to a website that might be connected with terrorists, will go to jail because we have this surveillance system. So your fear is replaced by another fear, and there is this whole chain of supporting fears that support the structure. So the first thing is to make sure that what you fear is actually a threat, and most of the rules are actually not real threats. So how to deal with this? This is the last part. Break stupid rules. If you don't believe there's a rule that should be followed, don't follow it. It's even with the simplest things like, being, not paying for public transport, try it. The maximum fine in Bratislava is 40 euros. So I took 40 euros, put it in my pocket, and I was riding with a ticket. And I was, looking like, are there these guys? And I'm like, I don't care. This is the budget. This is the 40 euros. I have it here. The only thing I'll do is I take it out of my pocket and I give it to the guy, and that's it. That's a replacement for the ticket. But I was, sitting, looking, okay, that might be an inspector. And, it took me literally a week to be able to just sit down and don't care about the rule. So actively breaking them. So not only realizing, okay, this is a stupid rule, but actually breaking the rule is what will get rid of the fear. Don't watch TV or media. They fuel on our fears. They promote them. Our brains actually get high on negativity because we are the evolution promotes the negative thoughts to if there's a threat, you're going to be eaten by a tiger, and it's a sunny day, you are focusing on the tiger, not on the sunny day. So we are biased towards negativity, and the TV and media make a really good use of this. So if you want to clean your thoughts and be more free of fears, get rid of it. Make sure that things you fear are actually real threats. So I'm not saying you should, cross the highway with cars riding 130 kilometers per hour and don't fear it. You should, because you will probably be hurt. Understanding emotions, feeling what you feel, which is the biofeedback thing. Challenge authorities. So Pavel is really good at that. He tries to talk the authorities talks some sense into the authorities. And it's not only government authorities, but also scientists, teachers, gurus. There's this notion of there's a double-blind study that has been done on 50 people, so this is the truth. Really? Is it? Did you see how they've done it? You know, is it a correlation? So challenge all kinds of authorities. And the last thing is that you shouldn't blindly rebel. So if you just do the opposite thing that the authorities want you to do, you're actually controlled by the rules. You just do the opposite thing. So it's not enough just to, you know, be different and rebel, but you should think and decide what is good for you. So that's my few recipes for freedom. And you can find these slides here, and there are previous talks about biohacking from last year and some from Polis and Bratislava about brain, and these last two are in Slovak and the one is in English. So that's a video recording of the last year's talk. And if you have any questions, if we have time. Sure. Thank you.
Is this one working? Yeah. So, Juraj, come here.
How do you buy stuff for food? Because I tried to avoid sugar and eat more fats, but all the time I felt at the logistical problem that buying fats only is quite hard, and I have to think further about it, and also it tends to be more expensive from what I've experienced. And since I don't feel exactly bad about my body and stuff, so my brain doesn't perceive the value for the money. So that's my question. How you do it?
So if you feel great, you don't need to do it. So I'm not telling everyone should do it. So that's the first thing.
Well, I have the cravings. So
okay. So first of all, you will eat much less because fat is it's the most energy dense source of food. So what happened to me when I started with this is I naturally started eating only once a day or twice a day, like a snack and a dinner. So I eat much less. I don't need, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks in between. So it's very energy dense. You can run a marathon with like this ball of fat, which can be butter. It can be half a butter. So, like what to eat, for me, it is a lot of butter or ghee, MCT oil, a lot of vegetables, and meat and eggs. And I think even in the shittiest restaurants, you can always get a salad. I know some people who are traveling with a piece of butter, so they put it on, and that's basically the fallback scenario, which always works. You can almost always get meat with vegetables at any place. Just make sure it's not cooked on sunflower oil.
And where can I get the MCT oil?
Online. So you're in Bratislava, so Powerlogy in Bratislava makes MCT oils. You can buy the bulletproof ones at healthy.nl, which is HELFI.nl. They ship to Europe. A friend of mine who is here sent me a link to like a chemical conglomerate that makes synthetic MCT oil. So normally it's extracted from either coconut oil or palm oil. But it needs to be extracted because the normal dose would be 8 tablespoons of coconut oil, which would send you directly to the toilet if you have actually eaten that much of coconut oil. So you can actually buy a synthetic version of the compound. So these are the 3 options. I haven't tried the third option, but Powerlogy and Healthy sell MCT oils.
Thank you.
And with ketones, which I also mentioned, you need to Google for that, but it's called exogenous ketones. So if you see the presentation, you can Google a few companies that are making that.
So are you currently keto all the way, like for the whole time, or?
No, so what I currently do is like a cycle. So during the day, I'm purely on fats, and in the evenings, I can have some carbs. As I say, I don't fear carbs. So if it doesn't work for me, I can have carbs at lunch. So but what is important is to teach your body to use both carbs and ketones as energy source and produce ketones. So if you start with this, I suggest that you drop carbs for a short time until your body learns, okay, this is another source of energy, I can use it. And you can only do this if you supplement with MCT oils, because other than that, your fat consumption will not work. So, yeah.
I'm practicing this low carb diet for more than 2 years, and I found that it's okay. You do need lower amount of carbs, but also you do need some carbs. So I found personally for me very well working a strategy like every 3-4 days have a kind of cheat day. Then you eat mainly carbs, but in that day usually you have to do a lot of good exercises, which is another thing. Never rely only on the diet. Do good, really good exercise. Find the good exercise for you.
Yeah.
Just try.
Yeah.
Just like try dieting,
I agree.
try the exercises, find what works for you.
Yeah, sure. It's a really good advice. I don't actually do cheat days because I found that I can eat healthily, and I don't consider eating a few carbs in the evening cheating. It's not cheating myself. So I try to avoid foods that I perceive as bad, which is for me gluten mainly. I don't do them ever. But this is another approach. You can do that, but you will get out of ketosis and you need to get back into ketosis. So you just need to think about that. But yeah, it works for many people, and you should exercise. So if you do the carbs, so it's a really good advice, and yeah, it works for some people much better than what I do. So I think you should experiment and find what works for you.
Thank you for the talk. I have 2 questions. The first one would be, could you maybe go more into detail about the difference in body response between sugar carving and hungry? Explain maybe to a person who has never been hungry. So, and the second thing is there some experiments about, let's say we need 2,000 calories a day for an average person, and we eat like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then we have these spikes. So have there been some experiments where you basically, instead of like eating 3 times, you eat like, I don't know, every half hour you eat 60 calories or something like that, or like that's not very practical, but about the mitigating these spikes and like having more like a constant source of energy.
I don't know if there was such a research, but you can certainly do that. You can also do it with food that releases carbs slowly. So from fruit, that would be like berries. So if you eat berries, you don't get this high spike and low, but it's really slowly into your bloodstream. But for me, I found out that fat burning works much better, and so I think it's worth trying. But you can definitely manage carbs as well. And the difference between sugar craving and hunger is usually hunger is very slow, has very slow onset. So you say, okay, maybe I should eat something, in the next few hours, and then it's slowly, gradually grows. So if you hit the wall and are in a place, I need to eat now, or I get agitated, angry, or something, that's the craving. Hunger is a very subtle feeling that sets on very slowly. So if it goes on slowly, it's hunger. If it's, right now I need to eat something, that's probably a craving. But I have a, sample size of 1. So I don't know how other people perceive hunger. But for me, it was like this.
Okay, so this was last question. We are out of time. So thank you very much, Juraj, for the presentation.